So let me ask you a simple question. How you make your decisions in life? Think about it. When you want to start a business, or when you want to start your financial journey, or let's say you want to make a career change in your life, how do you actually go and decide what to do first? Most of the people will directly go and copy whatever is working for other people. First, they will look at their parents, what worked for them, and then they will look at what is working for their friends or colleagues and try to replicate those in their life. And here exactly why a lot of middle class people who are well educated, hardworking, are stuck in this financial loophole where they cannot make right decisions. But here's a very simple mental model which you can use to separate yourself and build something of yourself rather than building something for someone else. The model is called first principle model, and in this video I will explain how this model can be used to build your own thinking process and why even the basic education system is built to avoid such kind of thinking processes. So let me explain what is first principle thinking actually is, because a lot of people have heard about this, but usually very few people know how practically it works in real life. So as a human being, the most basic mechanism to make decisions is by reasoning by analogy. So as a human being, we just go and look at whatever is there and try to make decisions based upon that or what is already working for other people. For example, if you want to prepare a dish, you will basically go and look at the recipe and try to follow it step by step. If you want to drive a car, you will go and listen to what the instructor is telling and follow it step by step to improve your driving skills. So reasoning by analogy, what basically it does is it avoids a lot of thinking process and gives you the answer very quickly. It's one of the easiest and less time consuming process of decision making. But here it becomes a trap for you and yourself. This thinking model itself puts you in a situation where you are unable to think of very creative methods and you always try to lean upon whatever other methods are working in the market. And if you want to start a business or if you want to start your financial journey, you need a decision making style which is different from whatever you are like in cooking or driving. It involves money and it involves a lot of stake from your side. And here where the decision making by analogy fails, because you are copying what is already working in the market. Basically you don't have edge in that kind of situation because everybody knows that kind of method. But the first principle thinking doesn't work like that. In first principle thinking, you don't go and copy something. You go and break down the problem into the most fundamental truth of that problem. You try to break down it into multiple smaller truths and find what is most important in it and what we can change in it or what we can build upon it, which can give you a certain edge in life, or edge in a business, or edge in a financial journey, or even edge in joining a career or making a change in your career or to finding a job. As we are moving into this AI era where we'll be seeing a lot of solopreneurs. Solopreneurs are basically entrepreneurs which don't have any employees. They work on their own. They have all the automated processes around them. They are not trying to solve a very big problem. What they are trying to solve is a very small problem, or that small problem is a part of a bigger machinery which is very crucial element itself. This fundamental thinking model can move you from what a basic employee or middle class employee thinks to a solopreneur mindset where you know that if I solve these small problems, I can build something around it. And I believe in the next 5-10 years, we'll be seeing those kind of people who come forward because technology is so cheaply available right now for individuals. On a larger scale, I believe AI is not that much efficient right now. Right now, we are seeing a lot of companies implementing AI, but at a larger scale, it's still not that efficient. It's still very costly for an organization. But for an individual, it's a very good proposition in terms of money and value. They're paying certain amount of money, but in terms of value they are extracting from that is very predominantly more from an organization. Because in an organization there can be a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of other processes which may hamper. There can be a lot of transition issues in company. But if you're a solopreneur, you are basically really flexible in adjusting or navigating these kind of situations. If you want to move, or if you want to start a side hustle, if you're employed and want to start a side hustle, and if you're thinking what should I start in, the first thinking you should develop is the first principle thinking, breaking down the problem to its fundamental truth. That is the only thing which will make you different from a regular employee and set on your path of a solo entrepreneur. So let me walk you through how a salaried employee is programmed in such a way that is always made to think in a reasoning by analogy method rather than first principle method. And it's not an individual problem, it's a systematic problem itself. Starting from your educational days to whenever you try to integrate into the society via a job, you're always trying to replicate the nominal process rather than thinking or breaking down the problem itself. Let's take a simple example in an education system where the teacher already has the right answers and you're graded not based upon your creativity or thinking out of the box, but you're graded upon the right answer that the teacher already has. So what you do is go study and memorize stuff, and in the exam you try to replicate answers and get close to the answers what the teacher has. So the education system itself is not rewarding you for creativity, but rewarding you for the already predefined answers that a teacher has. Fast forward, now you have joined a company and you have integrated into society. In the company you got into one project, and in that project the manager says that this is how we work. The project assigns some task to you and there is some definite outcome that they need. So let's say you make decision in such fashion or in such a working environment for 15-20 years. If you stick with a certain employee mindset in a particular company, over this 15-20 years you have basically developed a thinking process which is based upon replication. Now one day you try to get out of your job and try to start a business. The first thing you do is go and try to replicate what others are doing, and that's not a bad thing initially. But in a business you don't have an edge if you don't understand the problem itself. The most basic question an employee when he gets into a business mindset is what problem I should solve. Throughout his career of 15-20 years, he has been given the problem by some higher authority like a manager. The problem has already been fed to him, but he has not developed the mental model to identify or to dig out the problem himself and try to work towards it. So you have a completely different mindset, and when you try to switch those, that's a recipe for disaster. So let me show you how a first principle thinking actually works in real life. So let's take a very simple example. You're a salaried employee and you think in a reasoning by analogy model. For income, we'll think that you earn money by getting a job. And to earn more money, you have to get promoted, or you can switch to a newer company paying higher for your skill sets. That's the basic way of thinking. A person with a first principle thinking model will try to break down what is actually the income. And he will immediately come into a conclusion that income is nothing but exchange of value from one person to other. If you create considerable value for someone else, money will actually flow in your direction. And he will start asking the right questions, where I can create value other than my job. And such multiple smaller questions can change your life completely and how you think about everything. So the question right now is not how you can theoretically learn on this mindset. No, it's not actually that. It's about how you can practically implement the thinking process in your every decision making in your life. You can do this in three simple steps. The first step is ask multiple whys before you make any decisions, and not just in a theoretical way. Try to ask why in a very practical way. Why you want to start a YouTube channel? Because I want a passive income. Why do you want a passive income? because my salary is not enough. So such kind of why you have to drill down, or you have to ask like 5 times why to a particular question and try to get into the core of the problem or core of the motivation that is driving you to make that decision. The second method is always try to challenge the assumptions that has already been set up, because in an institution there are already some assumption that is made in the system, or there is always a layer of abstraction that you cannot see. The second thing you can do to identify the core truth of a problem is get away from all the assumptions and try to build your own thinking process. And third method is build from what you know, not from what you can see. Because if you try to replicate others, you are just following someone else's methods and you're not exploring your own path. Maybe he has made some assumptions, or maybe he had something different that is working for you, which is not visible for you right now. And when you follow the same path, maybe you cannot reach the end because there are a lot of assumptions in that. If you follow these 3 methods, at least you will move in the direction of first principle thinking and think for yourself rather than just copying someone else. So let me in the comment below, what is one certain assumption that you have accepted as a reality and never questioned. See you later.